This is sort of a cursory introduction to the urinary system. We'll talk about numbers, we'll talk about nephron anatomy and generally including the glomerulus, the renal tubule, the collecting ducts, and then we'll talk about the peritubular capillaries. We will actually not get to the general description of the kidney physiology today. So as far as the numbers go, 180 liters per day of fluid is filtered through the kidneys. 1% of this is going to leave the body as urine, which means that 99% of it is actually going to be returned to the blood. To the blood and to the body in general. 1,200 milliliters of blood is filtered through the kidneys each minute, and if you recall that the cardiac output is about 5 liters per minute, this means that the kidneys receive about a quarter of the cardiac output. At rest, 20 to 25% of the body's blood is used by the kidneys as well. So both of these numbers indicate the very importance of the kidneys, how much they do for the body, and how much of its energy is actually used by the kidneys at rest. What we're looking at here is a picture of a nephron. The nephron is the structural and functional unit of the kidneys. Different parts of the nephron include the glomerulus. The glomerulus is a set of blood vessels right inside of here, all those little wound around blood vessels in there. And the job of the glomerulus is to filter filtrate from the blood plasma. Now, filtrate is a liquid that is eventually going to become urine if it is not reabsorbed and returned to the body. Glomeruli, these little blood vessels inside of here, are fed and drained by arterioles. And the reason for this and why it is so useful is you can see there's an afferent arteriole and an efferent arteriole, which is a little unusual. Usually when you have a blood capillary, it's drained by venules, which are low pressure. In this case, you have arterioles both feeding and draining, which means that the blood is under high pressure throughout. That means that blood actually pushes against the walls of the glomerulus and pushes the filtrate out into the structure surrounding it, called the glomerular capsule. So it's very useful to have arterioles on both ends here because it keeps the blood pressure very high throughout this glomerulus. So fluid and solutes are going to be forced out of the blood at the level of the glomerulus and into the glomerular capsule. And then, 99% of it is actually going to be reabsorbed in the renal tubules, which is this entire system here. So you have the glomerular capsule here, which immediately takes that filtrate and pushes it into the rest of this structure in here. And a good 99% of that filtrate is going to be reabsorbed through all these series of convoluted tubes and eventually returned to the blood. Okay, so the renal tubule is basically everything between the glomerulus, or the glomerular capsule, and this structure here, which is the collecting duct. Now the collecting ducts, we actually know what they are, because if you look at a medullary pyramid, you'll see little stripes. In the medullary pyramid, these stripes are actually the collecting ducts. So this is what they look like. You can just, since there's so many of them, you can actually see them with the naked eye, but at a microscopic level they look like this. A collecting duct is going to receive filtrate that has already been run through all these renal tubules, and it's going to receive the filtrate from several different nephrons at the same time. And then what it's going to do is the collecting duct is going to run straight through the medulla, through the medullary pyramid, and eventually deliver the urine. At this point it is going to be called urine, not filtrate, but urine, to the minor calyx. Okay, and then you have minor calyces, which are right here, here, and here, major calyx here, renal pelvis here, and then eventually to the ureter, which is right here. Okay, so the renal tubule, this entire convoluted structure here, is divided into three parts. The first part is called the proximal convoluted tubule, or the PCT. The next part is called the nephron loop. And then the third part is called the distal convoluted tubule, right over here. And so those three parts are parts of the renal tubule. And this is where reabsorption into the body, reabsorption of much of the structure of the filtrate is going to take place. All right. And then the last thing today is we look at the peritubular capillaries. It turns out that when you look at how these actually work, there's a great deal. Here's a nephron here. There's another nephron here. And what you have surrounding it are a whole bunch of blood vessels called peritubular capillaries. And the peritubular capillaries basically weave in and out of those renal tubules and reabsorb or reclaim non-waste products from the renal tubules, and they are going to return it into the regular blood system. So that is the job of the peritubular capillaries.